hard on a poor, seven-child household like mine. The cost to attend the Feast of Tabernacles made it harder still, but the debt my parents incurred to do so, they felt, was well worth it, given the opportunity to see Armstrong in person. But I can recall seeing him in person only once when I was 7 or 8. My memory of the occasion, tainted by time's passage and Trump's ubiquity, places Armstrong at a podium, where he pauses delivering a typically terrifying sermon to scan the sea of nearly all-white worshippers, at last locating a black one before thrusting a finger in his direction and exclaiming, "Look at my Canaanite!" Canaanites. People versed in the book of Genesis will know were born of a mistake made by Noah. One night, the story goes, Noah consumed too much wine and decided to be naked for a while, which turned out to be all night because he fell asleep while still disrobed. His son Ham discovered him in this state and told his 2 brothers. Ham's 2 brothers, walking backward toward their father so as not to commit the unpardonable offense of gazing upon a parent's nakedness, covered Noah with a blanket. When Noah learned his nakedness had in fact been gazed upon by Ham, he cursed Ham's son, Canaan, proclaiming, "A servant of servants shall he be to his brothers." Armstrong interpreted this to mean that Canaan and his descendants were destined to attend to the needs of the holy race, i.e. white people, be it as slaves in cotton fields or cashiers at Macy's. To distinguish Canaanites from other races, God marked them with darker skin, thus the Negro. Thus, too, I deduced, a lesson in imprudence. Had Noah exposed himself while sober or even only mildly inebriated, it is unlikely he would have fallen into a deep slumber. He would have dozed off, to be sure, being a male of a certain age, nearly 600 years old, but doubtlessly within arm's reach of his toga, thereby having time to cover himself upon being awakened by the sound of approaching sandals. Waking, instead, to the sound of his children's giggles, and with a blanket heaped upon his loins, Noah was left to stew in anger, the very trait, Armstrong maintained, that primarily characterized black people. My parents were not among the black people who stewed in anger, but I wish they had been. Maybe then they would not have joined Armstrong's church, thereby sparing me, in 1964, from being born into it. Not that I minded at first. To the contrary, I was grateful, as church members would soon be taken to the place of safety while everyone else went through some things. Armstrong had prophesied that at the start of the Great Tribulation in 1972, God would unleash demons, earthquakes, hail, brimstone, famine, droughts, and locusts to reveal his glory and to prove he was not bluffing about ending the world in 1975. He was bluffing, though. 1972 and 1975 came and went without incident. For a while there, 1978 looked promising for some terrible events, but they did not pan out either. Most church members were confused by this until 1979, when Mike Wallace of 60 Minutes did an expose on the Radio Church of God, now renamed the Worldwide Church of God, revealing it to be a mixture of quackery, corruption, and greed. Armstrong was not the Messiah. No terribleness would be unleashed while we were in the place of safety. The world's end was not imminent. Moreover, whites were not the holy race, and blacks were not destined to serve them. This was good to know, but it would have been better to have known it sooner, because in 1979, I was 15 and the damage was done. Along with accepting the myth of white supremacy, I had been denied meaningful exposure to black traditions and culture. The Worldwide Church of God, for example, followed strict Levitical dietary laws that forbade its members from eating unclean foods, which meant no chitlins, pork ribs and neck bones, or fried catfish. We were discouraged from listening to music with profane lyrics or sexual innuendo, or that implored us to make it funky, thereby eliminating much of blues and R&B, and certainly Lucille Bogan, Chuck Willis, and James Brown. Our afros were not supposed to be spectacular, like Sly Stone's or Angela Davis's, and our speech had to be proper, which is to say free of slang and excessively rhythmic cadences. And in response to a racist society, we could not march, sit in, fist raise, riot, or even curse white folk, since a racist society, Armstrong preached, was also God's plan. But we could be, and were, full of ourselves. That was impossible to avoid, considering the kingdom of heaven would admit only exceptional blacks, the best of the very best. And these were the blacks, Armstrong led us to believe, whom God had called. When you have been identified by God as exceptional and are estranged from black traditions and culture, it is a small leap.